We all know when a massive storm strikes, such as a hurricane or major winds, power lines suffer. Omar Lopez with AEP-Texas joins us live right now with how they are preparing for hurricane season. Omar, it's always a pleasure seeing you. It's been a while since we've had you in studios. A lot has changed over the last couple of years for everybody.
Yes.
How have y'all been preparing leading up to the start of today?
You know, John, thanks for having us. You know, today starts hurricane season, but we really think about hurricane season all year long. We're always working to determine the best technologies that can help customers, the best way to communicate. Our crews are always training to make sure they can respond the fastest, safest way possible. So about a month ago, all of our company employees who could be part of a hurricane restoration came down to Corpus Christi. We go through an extensive hurricane drill, and we probably inject every imaginable scenario that you could think of. This year we worked with about a level 3 storm, but we factor in, you know, down power lines, broken poles, the number of customers out, and we really walk through the steps in real time, how long it's going to take to restore customers, how long it's going to take to assess the damage at the beginning of the entire operation, and really who's involved. So we're prepared, and now we're asking customers to do the same. Do it now before there's a storm in the Gulf. You can go to AEP-Texas.com. We have a whole lot of resources there, but now's the time to really get ready for a hurricane.
I was going to say, unfortunately, fortunately, we've seen our share of storms, and especially over the last decade, the last 7 years or so, 8 years, Harvey, Hannah. That's a good thing in the sense that when stuff happens, y'all go back afterward, look at what worked, what didn't, so you're really prepared for these types of events.
Exactly, we do that. 2 weeks after a storm is over, we all come together and really look to see what we could do better for the customer. How can we respond faster? How can we be safer with everything that we do? And that's important because the next storm, as you know, is always around the corner. It's a matter of time before we get hit again. We've had an unusually busy spring storm season in the Rio Grande Valley. And so a lot of our guys here have been in the valley, and we've been watching and learning from what we've been seeing. I think we think sometimes in terms of hurricanes and tornadoes, but what we see a lot of now is straight line winds, really powerful winds that are knocking down poles and knocking down lines. And so we have to consider those factors into our restoration plan.
Well, let's do this. Let's bring in Carly right now because she has some good input and some questions that she wants to ask you right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't think about the hazards that those down power lines bring. You know, once the storm comes through, what should people be thinking about, or preparing for the worst case scenario as storms are coming through the area?
Well, what we'll ask, number one, is customers visit us at AEP-Texas.com. And you can go to AEP-Texas.com and you can learn what to do before a storm, during a storm, and after a storm. I'm glad that you mentioned down power lines because you should consider any down power line energized and dangerous. Even if it's not a power line, any line on the pole, consider it dangerous. Stay 10 feet away from that line. You can report it as a safety hazard at AEP-Texas.com or by calling. You can find the number online as well. But keep your pets away, keep your kids away. I know right after a hurricane, it seems that the weather feels really mild. Yeah. It feels really nice outside, and we really want to go outside and explore and see the neighborhood, but that's when we're most vulnerable. You'll have down power lines, and sometimes they're not always apparent. They may be hanging, they may be in the bushes. Stay 10 feet away from a down power line. And really just, if you're in an emergency and if you're not safe, always call 911. But know that in a storm, as soon as it's safe for us to be out on the streets, our damage assessors are on the streets determining what's the best plan of action, and you'll see our trucks roll shortly after.
That's good advice. Omar, thank you so very much. Carly, I'm sure you have more questions. I don't know if you have one more you want to throw in really quickly.
I guess you talked about preparing for like a Cat 3 storm. What is some of the timelines that people should think about being without power for?
Well, I tell you what, it's always a question of Mother Nature and the damage she's going to bring. We always ask if you are on any kind of life-saving equipment, oxygen, something like that, you need to prepare for a prolonged power outage after a hurricane, because what's going to happen is those winds and those rains are going to break poles, they're going to get trees into your lines, and we need to really have an honest assessment after the fact, after the storm passes, how long it will take, and we just don't know what it is before a storm. So we ask people to prepare. If you don't think you'll be safe here, we always ask people to listen to local authorities and have an evacuation route, or evacuate if you need to, but make plans, because almost inevitably with the hurricane, you're going to see some sort of power outage. Our job is to make sure that time is as short as possible, but we just don't know what's going to happen.
Well, we appreciate your efforts. We appreciate you coming in this morning. Thank you so very much, Omar. Carly, we're going to send it over to you.
Yeah, we do have a little bit of data just based on some of the hurricanes that have been through the area. Now, the Saffir-Simpson wind scale is what we use to create that category that everybody kind of associates with the hurricanes. So Category 1 is 74 to 95 mile per hour wind speeds, and that's going to start to take down some broken power lines, but it's probably not going to be the worst case scenario, right? So by Category 2, you're 96 to 110 miles per hour. You're dealing with some major roof damage at that point, roads being blocked with debris, and we're starting to near some total power loss for days and possibly even weeks, even at that Category 2 level. By Category 3, that's when we have the major hurricane status. So that's 111 mile per hour winds to 129 miles per hour. That's when the electricity could be down or unavailable for, of course, days to weeks. And once you get to Cat 4, Cat 5, we're talking 130 mile per hour plus winds, and that's when you could be preparing for power outages for months. And that's if you're lucky enough to still have your home. Well-built homes start to be severely damaged at that point. Most roofs are gone, and of course Cat 5 being the worst with 156 mile per hour winds, and that's when homes are totally destroyed. So that is kind of an idea of how that Saffir-Simpson wind scale does come into play, but it doesn't take into account the other impacts that a storm will have, the other hazards, storm surge, inland flooding, and rain, which is the cause for more than 50% combined of those fatalities that do happen during a hurricane. And additionally, the forecast cones are getting smaller, and that's something that we're going to be talking about coming up in our hurricane special that's airing this Sunday at 6 p.m. We're going to talk about how the forecast cones are getting smaller because forecasting is improving, but then that doesn't cover all the wide spectrum of the impacts of that hurricane. So it's going to be a really interesting thing to kind of learn about coming up on Sunday, Barbie.